What do you love about being outside and active?
I'm sure I've spent more time outdoors than in. That just feels like home.
Enjoy what you can do, because you never know what is around the corner.
Just being outdoors in the fresh air, it just clears my mind.
Fully immersed in nature is what brings me the most joy.
My name is Dominic Brown and you're listening to the Outside and Active podcast, where this week our guest is Sarah Stevenson. Sarah is a 4-time Olympian, 3-time world champion, bronze Olympic medalist and a trailblazer in the sport of Taekwondo. Alongside being incredibly talented at Taekwondo, she's also had to battle and struggle against some real difficulties and hurdles in life that we go on to talk about in this podcast. I say this in the podcast, but I think the way that Sarah talks about mental resilience and mental health is extremely refreshing, and I'm really, really happy that she came on as a guest in this podcast, and I'm looking forward to you listening to it. Thank you to the 2 sponsors of this week's episode, Festival of Sport and Dry Robe. We'll go on to talk a little bit more about both of these later in the podcast, but for now, let's join the conversation with Sarah Stevenson. Hello and welcome back to the Outside and Active podcast, where today I'm very happy to be joined by Sarah. Sarah, hello, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. We were just talking about it being early on a Monday, and it's probably not the best time to record a podcast because it's early on a Monday, but and the fact that it's sunny outside and we're inside, but we're going to be talking about all things active-based. And I want to kick off the episode by offering you a piece of advice, and the piece of advice doesn't come from me. It's come from someone who's been on the podcast recently, and this piece of advice comes from Tony Suter, who is the founder of the Ellie Suter Foundation, which supports young athletes in the snow sport industry. And his piece of advice was to make sure to give ourselves time as well as giving time to other people. So it's all about it. The way that he said it was that the people coming onto your podcast and be guests on the podcast are definitely very active and very busy, lead very busy lives, but need to make sure that they find time for themselves. So what do you like at trying to find time in what I imagine is a very busy schedule for yourself?
It's a great piece of advice. And I do a little bit of public speaking, and I kind of always finish with something like that as well. Especially to people in the corporate world, they're the worst at making time for themselves. You know, they're so busy and trying to make millions and keep the business afloat. I think they're the worst at it from my experience, and that piece of advice always goes down really well, and you can see them all looking in the air thinking, yeah, I really need to do that. But I do that, I try to, and I know when I've not done it as well. I know, you know, come the end of the week, if I've not done anything for me, for my family, or took that time to really be present and engage with what I'm doing, it does affect me, like, mentally. So things I like to do is keeping fit, keeping healthy. So that could be going to the gym, it could be going for a walk, especially in this sunshine. It's just so much nicer, isn't it, for your mental health? It makes you just smile, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I like to do. For me, is just walking, training.
Well, my next question leads on quite nicely from that, and it's a question that we ask to everyone as well. What do you love about being outside and active?
I just love the time alone. Sometimes if I go for a walk and I'm outside, I will be like, right, I really want to do like a certain amount of time or a certain amount of kilometers. But most of the time it's just, let's just get out. Let's just go and have that time for me, that time, you know, with the trees and with the air and with the sunshine. I just love that time alone, that time for me. And it could just be 20 minutes, but it's something. And I think, as you said, we're so busy and everyone has excuses, you know, I've not got the time. I'm like, well, you've probably got 20 minutes somewhere at a bare minimum to go for a walk, to get outside. And that is going to have massive benefits for you, you know.
Have you always been active from a young age? I mean, tell me about growing up in Doncaster, isn't it?
Lovely Doncaster, yes. Well, there's not a lot of nice outdoor things where I grew up, I'll be honest. It's a lot better up in Liverpool. But yeah, always really. I started Taekwondo when I was about 7 years old. And I think in a school, in a town that's not, you know, that doesn't offer a lot of opportunities really, in anything really when I was growing up. So I just did Taekwondo, that was it. That was all I ever did. I didn't do anything else. I probably specialised way too early. You know, I know that's one of the things a lot of people talk about is trying different sports, but there wasn't any. That was it for me, you know, locally for me was just Taekwondo, and I did that from 7 years old, and that's all I've ever done. Yeah, so physically, and I was good at everything, you know, I enjoyed sport. I was good at, you know, all the stuff at school. The only thing I didn't like was football, hated football.
Interesting.
Other than that, I was all right.
I mean, I find it interesting. I mean, we've spoken to lots of different athletes and specialists, industry specialists on this podcast, but never anyone in a sport quite like Taekwondo, because I say that because it's not maybe the typical, you know, running and football, rugby, cricket that you might naturally be pushed into at a younger age. What was it? Where did the door open to Taekwondo for you?
It's an interesting question, because who would have thought Doncaster would have been probably the mecca of Taekwondo in this country at that time, and it was there on my doorstep. So I think we were very lucky, because a lot of Taekwondo athletes now still come from Doncaster. I think it was some sort of masters from many, many moons ago kind of settled there, and then that just kind of spread it out and in that area. So I think it was just a town that I lived in that I was lucky enough to kind of be a massive, an amazing club that I went to, the best club in the country. I didn't know that. It was just the one closest to me. You know, who knows? You just rock up at your local club and you just, you don't know that you're in the best club in the country. So lucky in that respect. And I forgot the question now, but I'm just going to carry on.
On Taekwondo, explain a bit more for people that don't know about the sport, about it, and maybe what separates it from other sports in a similar category.
What I might do with that question actually is maybe talk about, I suppose, me as a person growing up. I was quite shy, believe it or not. I was quite a shy girl, and I got kind of thrust into Taekwondo when my brother did it. My mum and dad got a bit of a social life, so it's like, you're doing it as well, so they can have a babysitter for a couple of hours. I think that's what it was at some point. And I kind of felt like I didn't really have much of a choice. And I was all right with that. I was all right with that at the time. And I think Taekwondo gave me like a team. It gave me a place where I could, I suppose, express myself where I wouldn't do at school or outside. I was quite shy and introvert. But in Taekwondo, you can't be shy and introvert because someone's trying to kick you in the face, or you get taught to make noises and kick things really hard and shout and things. So, you know, you've got to do that in the club. And I think it gave me the kind of that outlet, and it gave me that confidence, and I suppose it made me who I am. And I think as well, if you can be lucky enough to have an incredible coach and role model at the club that you're in, because that they can make you or break you. Many club coaches get it right, many club coaches don't, and I think that all the stars aligned really for me. And having that club coach and great parents and an amazing club just kind of set me up for life really.
So it had a tremendous impact on your character and your personality, but you were also, well, had a great talent for it. When was there a point that you realised, or people around you realised, that you had a talent for this, or was it something that happened gradually?
It definitely happened gradually. I wasn't the most blessed. I didn't make Taekwondo look pretty. I wasn't the most elegant Taekwondo athlete. But what I did have was like guts, and I did what I was told, and I mean that in the best way. You know, my coach said, do this, I did it because I had that much respect for him, and my parents had that much respect for him. We did everything that he asked of us, you know. And do you know what? I think growing up, my coach must have known that I had something special, but he never told me that. And I think that's good. I really think that's good. I think my feet were always firmly on the ground. I won the Junior World Championships when I was 15, and that was the first time anyone had ever done that. And then I won the Senior World Championships when I was 18, and again I was the first person to ever do that. And even then, I'd go back to my club, say hi to the kids, show a medal off, and my coach would be like, right, get running then, what do you think you're doing? You're not above anyone here, you know, crack on. And I just think that keeping you grounded, you know, was the best thing. And I'm still like that. I don't think you should ever be above your station, but you've got to find that balance of knowing how good you are, knowing how, you know, how hard it is for someone to stand in front of you and try and beat you, but not knowing that you're going to win, not assuming you're going to win either. And I think that was kind of built into me from a young age.
Yeah, you didn't rest on your laurels, you were continually trying to impress.
Oh God, no. Honestly, I can tell you so many stories, but I think you know, when you're a teenager and you push the boundaries, don't you?
Yeah.
And I remember coming back from the Olympics, I think. I went to the Olympics when I was 17 years old. And I remember coming back to my club and saying to my coach, I don't need to do that. You know, I'm not doing that the same as everyone else. And he can't do this nowadays, but he literally said, right, let's go. He put me in his car. We drove for 5 kilometres. And he said, right, get out, you're running home. Don't ever think that you're not doing the same as everyone else, that you're not, you know. And I think, oh my God, you know, when you look, obviously now it's different, you know, now you'd have to get written consent from parents and this and that. But my parents had a great relationship with my coach, and they would say, no, too right, sort her out, she should never get above a station. And I remember having to run back, absolutely bricking it, thinking if I stop, he's going to see me, you know. And that was the first time I'd ever run 5 kilometres in my life. I was absolutely dieting, but I never ever tried to get above my station ever again.
I'm just going to take a little break in this conversation to talk to you a little bit about our first sponsor, Festival of Sport. Try something new this summer at Festival of Sport, taking place on the 11th to the 14th of August. Keen to get your kids into sport, but still trying to work out which one. This August, Festival of Sport gives 5 to 17-year-olds the chance to try over 20 sports in a single weekend. From American football to archery, kayaking to climbing, and trampolining to boxing. It's all happening at the beautiful Holcombe Park in North Norfolk. What's more, all sessions are led by sports pros including Olympians, world champions, and gold medalists. For the full family festival vibe, there's also live music and entertainment, a wellness zone, a packed international street food village, and camping and glamping on site. Festival of Sport is on from the 11th to the 14th of August 2023, and tickets are available now at festivalofsportuk.com. So how does a introverted young girl go from picking up Taekwondo and, you know, starting to see that character change and that progression in terms of quality to then being at the Olympic Games in Sydney in 2000? How did that sort of transpire over time?
I think time is what it takes. I think you can't, you know, everyone said, oh, you know, everyone tells young people like you need some confidence. Oh, well, how do you expect me to get that then? Have you just got a magic bag of it that you can just give me, or is it a special tablet or something? It's confidence is something that takes time to get, and it's not a click of the fingers and assume that a young person's going to have it. And even me going to the Olympics, how is a 17-year-old girl from Doncaster whose first Olympics was the actual first time Taekwondo was in the Olympics? So I never met another Taekwondo Olympian. So I was the first one. So how am I supposed to be confident for that? You know, and we didn't have support. We didn't have money. We weren't a full-time program. I was still at, you know, college, trying to train when I could. We had 2 athletes, 2 staff. That was literally our Olympic team. So confidence in that situation is probably quite hard. Confidence comes from the journey. It comes from, you know, that experience of that Olympics was an amazing experience. I I came really close to getting a medal. I actually should have, if I'd had more confidence, I probably would have got a medal. It was literally, one kick would have done it. But yeah. I was 17, I was a baby, and all those things taken into context that, this massive thing, I'd never even known what to expect at an Olympic Games, never met an Olympian before. So it's the journey, isn't it? And then you go, right, I'm not letting that happen again. And then the next year and the next year. And it just kind of builds to a point where, you grow, the sport grows. With that comes money. With that comes psych support, physios, doctors, all that kind of stuff, where you can learn, that mindset. And that was massive for me, as I said before, to get to that point where you know how good you are, and you know that you're going to have to fight pretty bad to lose, or that person's going to have to proper bring their A-star game to try and beat you. And that's kind of where I got to, where it's like, if I fought good, I knew I was going to win, but I also knew that there was someone trying to beat me as well. So we never kind of come too complacent. It's that fine line, I think, of confidence. It's just time and the journey.
So 2 questions picking up on what you just said from before and after that experience. Going into it then, like you said, it's a new sport in the Olympics. There's a small team of you. Do you feel like that adds more pressure or takes pressure away from that situation? Because, it's the first time, any experience is positive, or is it thinking, oh no, I have to make a mark here? And then afterwards, narrowly missing out on a medal, are you thinking, well, that was a great experience, I'm only 17, I can build on that? Or was it, I may have missed an opportunity?
Yeah, all of that, all of it. I think, I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself. I think because, again, we were going to the Olympics, it was the first one, I was junior world champion and I'd just qualified for the Olympics. So it's kind of a bit of a upward journey. And I assumed that everyone was like, Sarah's going to win. I mean, we put pressure on ourselves by assuming what other people think, where actually people just want us to be happy and they want us to do our best. That's it. And if they don't, then who cares? They're not in your life anyway, leave them, so, but again, that takes time to get to that point where you take that pressure off yourself. But I definitely felt pressure. I put a lot of pressure on myself. And then again, because I wanted to win so much, that's why I lost, because I didn't have the right plan in place. I didn't, I was too focused on winning. I forgot what to do in the ring. I forgot what my plan was. And rather than focusing on what I need to do round by round, I was trying to think, everyone wants me to win. I'm this Sarah Stevenson up and coming young person. I've got to win. And that's what I was focusing on, because I didn't know any different and we didn't know any different. So yeah, the pressure wasn't really there from myself. And then obviously when I lost and I come so close, ridiculously close, you couldn't have got any closer to even getting into the final. I would have got a silver at the minimum. And I just froze because I think I didn't know how to handle that, and that took a long time, I think, to kind of get over that. Again, everything in life for me, time is a healer, and it just takes time to know how to make sure that you don't feel like that again.
I find that really interesting. You talking about having a plan, but it changes. Other things crop up mentally when you're actually in that situation. I just want to tap into that. It's like obviously you will prepare for an opponent for a match, but when it actually comes to it, other things creep in and the emotion maybe takes place. So try and explain to people listening how that crops up.
I mean, before I knew how to handle that kind of mental balance, you're trying to do it yourself, aren't you, with no support, no guidance. And, for me at that 17 and even the next Olympics was very similar. I've got to win because everyone's looking at me. And then, then you've got someone in front of you that you're 2-0 down and you're like, right, what am I going to do now to get these points back? And it's a very reactive, I think, mindset, really. Because obviously you are in a combat sport and you can't actually control what the person's going to do in front of you. But what I wasn't doing very good was actually knowing myself. I didn't know my strengths or how I start a match no matter what, and how I try and control a match. and you're able then to react a little bit better to what that person does if you know your strengths. And I never knew that. I didn't even know that was a thing at that time. And it probably took me to, I think, my third Olympics to really understand that,
I'm just jumping in here to tell you about the second sponsor of today's episode, Dry Robe. Dry Robe have been supporting us for a long time, and it's great to have them back. Dry Robe is the original outdoor changing robe, designed to help you get active outside, whatever the weather. A bit like having your own portable changing room, the oversized design of the Dry Robe Advance gives you plenty of space to get changed in and out of a wetsuit or sports kit, but is versatile enough to be worn as a coat or jacket. Made from 100% recycled fabrics, the waterproof and windproof outer protects you from the elements, whilst its super warm inner lining helps you to dry off quickly after getting out of the water. What people really love about the Dry Robe Advance, though, is its versatility. It's perfect for a huge range of outdoor activities, including surfing, wild swimming, triathlon, paddleboarding, mountain biking, camping, and even just walking your dog in the torrential rain. To find out more, head to dryrobe.com. And again, trying to tap into that mindset. I mean, there's a long period between 2000 and 2008 where you're winning medals in Europe and the World Championships, but maybe not finding the same success at the Olympic Games. Was it that extra pressure that maybe you put on yourself? Athens was probably the worst competition of my life because I did so well in Sydney. I was world champion, European champion probably at that point a couple of times over. And again, I did the same thing really when I was like, right, come on, you've got to win. Don't go home embarrassing yourself. This is, and it was just stupid, absolutely. And to be honest, even as a team, we weren't very good. We were not good at all. I think we did a lot of things wrong, not just me individually, as the team. We were a very young minority sport with little money. So we were all just winging it a little bit. And I think even, we've got the same PD now who's done things so much different and so much better. And if you look at the success we've had since Beijing and onwards, we've absolutely smashed it because we've all had to learn and had to grow. It's just a bit crap when it's you that's the one that is kind of the guinea pig, but it makes you who you are, and I wouldn't change it, It just support and money in the sport helps because you can buy the services that you need, and that's what kind of for me was like the change. Going to Beijing was like the first time I thought, right, I'm going to enjoy this Olympics. I'm going to smile. It is what it is, but I know what I'm doing. I know my strengths. I know my plan. I know how to get in the zone. So I knew so much more about my mind, how I can control myself and my mind. And that was I was like never been in such great shape mentally or physically going into Beijing. And Beijing was where that medal came, but it seemed to be under extraordinary circumstances and things happened. Tell me a bit more about what happened at Beijing. Oh, it's like the story of my life, isn't it? There's nothing ever just simple. I do all the hard work, and everyone, that gets all the lessons and well, don't do that again. What Sarah did. It's always great when it goes that way, isn't it? It's always going to be someone, hasn't it? So we obviously before Beijing we had an increase in funding. We had psych support. We got to work with the incredible Dr. Steve Peters and the chimp management team, and it was like this whole kind of worms was open for me. Like, whoa, this is how you control all these negative thoughts. I didn't even know you could do that, and it was like absolutely mind-blowing to learn about the brain, how it works, why it works, what's helpful, what's not. And I suppose that might be another podcast, but knowing how to kind of, I suppose, get rid of all the negativity in a way that makes you just so tunnel visioned to actually be able to compete and think about what you need to do in that moment was amazing. And it was absolutely changed my life. And I also wanted to enjoy and smile for a change rather than putting all this pressure on myself. And that's what I did. My parents and my family thought,
something was wrong because I was smiling. I didn't look like I was absolutely crapping myself. I was like smiling and eating and drinking and enjoying the journey, because you've got to, haven't you? It's a bloody Olympics, isn't it? You've got to enjoy it, you know. And
So
this is my third one. So I won my first fight. Again, like amazing, felt like absolutely on fire. And then I was going in for the second fight against China. So this girl had won the Olympics twice. So she'd won Sydney, Athens, and then this was going for a third one. And I'd beaten her before. So when I won the Worlds, I beat her. And I just, you know, again, I always speak about that confidence. I knew that I was going to win. I knew, and I never really had that much confidence before, but I knew because I'd watched her fight. I thought, I'm better than her today. She's doesn't even look like she looks a bit injured. She doesn't really look like she wants to be there. Her body language was really completely opposite to mine. And yeah, just the whole fight was, I felt like I could have done anything and I would have won that fight. It was very corrupt. The referees scored the points at that time. There wasn't electronic scoring, so my fate was in other humans' hands, really. And they didn't score my points. And when I do my public speaking, I show the video of me kicking the girl in the face and everything, like literally all around the ring for like 3 rounds. And I think she kicked like once, got 1 point, and won. And it was just absolutely heartbreaking to feel like that, to feel like I knew that I won and I should have won. And for someone to take that away from you is probably the worst. That was like the worst moment of my life, like absolutely. Yeah. Which is daft because it is just sport and it is just Taekwondo. That was my life. That was the worst thing at that point that had ever happened to me. And everyone was very angry. I wanted to go home, probably never want to do Taekwondo ever again. Because how can you if you can't trust the people that are supposed to do their job?
You must lose complete trust in that system.
Absolutely lost faith in the sport, in the people that I'm supposed to trust. And my team put a protest in, to which they did overturn the decision. I didn't know this at the time. The only thing I knew is I got told, right, you've got 5 minutes, you're on now. And I'm like, what? Wow. If I'm feeling like the worst day of my life, to never wanting to do Taekwondo again, to literally wanting to go home and curl up in a ball, for someone to tell you that, right, you're on in 5 minutes in an Olympic semi-final, I don't think any psych in the world could have helped in that situation. And it was hard to get ready for that next fight. And I wasn't focused. The crowd were booing me. The crowd were just cheering for the Mexican girl. So everyone in that arena felt like hated me, and I could hear it as well. When you're in the zone, you don't hear it, but I could hear everything. So it was a really tough match. Obviously I didn't win, absolutely busted my ankle at the same time. The girl that beat me went on to win. So it was a tough situation to be in, but I kind of needed to flick that switch and get to some sort of mental strength for the next match, because I needed to just go home with a medal. I thought I kind of went into Doncaster Sarah and just thought, listen, I need to get this bloody medal now, because this, like, sort yourself out. No psych, I didn't need a psych, I just needed a good slap and to say, right, come on now. This has been a really tough day, let's go and get that medal. And I had to have an injection in my ankle, so I couldn't actually feel my right foot. So I could only do a couple of things, but I was so determined to go home with the medal. It's not the one I wanted. I got it in the end. It's not what I wanted. It's not what I deserved, but it's a journey and we learn from it, and Taekwondo's learned from it. We now have, electronic body armors, head guards. That takes a lot of kind of the human errors away and corruption away. Yeah. So after that match, a lot changed for Taekwondo, really, for everybody else, which was good. And again, it hurt so much. It did. And it took a long time to be proud of that medal. It's nice. It's amazing to say that I was the first person to get an Olympic medal for my sport. That's such a proud thing.
Yeah.
And it could have been any colour, so it still would have been that. But it's just a shame it happened like that. But, you know, I'm proud of it. I'm very proud of myself for getting through that. You know, and yeah, it's just the journey, isn't it?
And that's the situation, like you said, no psych in that at that time would have been able to help, because you've gone from, well, the previous beating the Chinese girl and being so, well, you know, going into that, being so confident, so ready, so like, yeah, I'm going to win this. I know where she's not 100%, I'm 100%, feeling like you've won it, to then the distraught feeling of, hold on, no, they've taken this away from me, wanting to go home, wanting to quit, to then having to prepare yourself prepare yourself again in front of an audience that will have been very angry, and you can't shut that out, and then go again to try and win a medal. I mean, it's an extraordinary sort of roller coaster of emotions. But I mean, I was going to ask the question about, can you then appreciate that bronze medal? And you've answered there, you can over time, but obviously I imagine there was that bitter feeling in the immediacy. It
hurt so much, like really hurt, you know, because, and also you don't want to be that person to say, listen, I was cheated, you know, I should have won a gold, because everyone's there's so many athletes that are going to go home and go, you know what, if I'd have just put my left foot there or my right foot there, I'd have won gold, you know, and everyone be like, yeah. But you don't want to be that person to say that, but like, it probably would have been gold for me, like absolutely, if that didn't happen, you know. And do you know what? It might not have been, but at least that semi-final would have been in a cracking fight, and I would have been prouder of the bronze, if that makes sense, because I know that it was in my hands, you know, and not in anyone else's. But it just takes time. It absolutely takes time, and the more you talk about it, the easier it becomes. So, you know, when I do my public speaking, I tell this story, and everyone's so proud and happy. And, you know, for people that are not Olympic athletes, you know, when you tell them your story, they appreciate it. They're proud of you, and it's nice to be able to share that with them, and to share with them, you know, what mentally you have to go through to achieve something, even if it's not what you want. Because we can't always assume we're going to win and get the outcome we want, but it's about giving everything that you can. That's the journey, isn't it? And I keep saying that word. I'm going to stop saying it now.
I like it. If I can move us forward to 2011, became world champion again, but the year leading up to that presented you with some unbelievable human challenges. Tell me a bit about what happened in that period of time, and how that affected not only your ability in Taekwondo, but also your mental well-being.
Yeah, so it's crazy to think that, you know, that the day that I got a bronze medal was the worst day of my life up until 2011. It kind of puts that into perspective, really. So 2011 was the year before the Olympics, the year that you've got to put your stamp and your name in the weight group that you want to go in. So heading to the World Championships is a massive opportunity. If I did well at the Worlds, pretty much going to guarantee that I go to the Olympics the year later. But I had like such, devastating news in the January 2011. My mum got rushed into hospital, and we didn't know what was going on, but my dad phoned me, and it's probably a phone call that I'll never forget. Like, you know exactly where you are, you know exactly the words that he said, and it probably haunt me for the rest of my life. But my dad said to me, your mum's got cancer, it's everywhere, and there's nothing they can do. And that is like someone just hitting you with a brick. It was like someone just like took my legs away from me. It was the most surreal moment. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone, because you just assume that, you know, you've been in the Olympics, you've got this medal, everyone wants a piece of you, you know, you getting lots of nice things in life, lots of nice events, dinner parties, you know, whatever, you know, as an Olympic athlete with the medal. And then that happens, and it's just all becomes, irrelevant really, but you just start to feel like you're untouchable, I think, in some ways, you know, that this kind of thing doesn't happen to you, but it does. It can happen to anyone. And, you know, trying to manage training, trying to manage looking after mum was really difficult. The hardest thing I ever had to do. And then in April, my dad got rushed into hospital, and we just thought it was stress because obviously he's trying to look after my mum and everything like that. And then we got results back from a scan from him, and he got diagnosed with a stage 4 brain tumour, like 3 months after my mum, who had lymphoma, like cancer of the blood. My mum had a bit of a fighting chance. My dad got told 12 months, 18 months. And this was, I think, 3-4 weeks before the World Championships. Both my parents had cancer. Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
You know, what are you supposed to do in that moment? And also, like, the first thing my mum and dad said to me was, you have to go to the Worlds and we'll be there at the Olympics with you. And I think I am a parent now, and I probably would have said the same thing, like, go, just go.
Yeah.
But what sport teaches you is a lot of kind of ownership, self-management, time management. And I decided to look after them, not all by myself, but I was the head of everything. So whilst also trying to, I suppose, manage my team in Manchester for me going the Worlds, I was also managing their hospital schedules, chemo, radiotherapy, hospital visits, who's doing what day, who's doing what time, who's taking dad, who's visiting mum, because it was a very, very logistical nightmare. And then also, you know, I needed training plans. If I wasn't in Manchester and I was in Doncaster or Sheffield at the hospital, where am I going to fit all these training sessions on so I can go to the Worlds and win the Worlds and qualify for the Olympics, pretty much. So if you can, like, get your head around that, I don't know if you can really, you know.
It's such a physically and mentally taxing thing to be happening at the same time as, again, you, in an ideal world, you're solely focused on these world championships leading then into the Olympics, but obviously perspective comes into it, I imagine, at this point.
Yeah, definitely. Oh God, that perspective was the biggest thing, the best thing that ever happened to me, or one of anyway, at least. It was just like I had to keep putting everything into perspective. And I think me going to the Worlds was hard enough to leave them, but I did because I knew I had to go and try and qualify, because I knew there was no point just giving up. And yeah, the perspective was massive, because whatever I was going through, however hard I thought this training was and this logistical kind of nightmare going on, it wasn't cancer, was it? It wasn't. I'm not fearing that I'm going to die. So shut up, like, get on with it. And that's what kept me going, really. And I think just thinking about all these plans, it did help. And when I fought in that World Championships, I never felt the way that I felt. I felt so, like, untouchable, because I thought, well, if I lose, so what? Like, you know, a lot of athletes and humans, we want to win. We have that fear of losing, which is good in some ways. But I didn't care. I did not care if I lost. I did not care if someone hit me in the face and knocked me out. I couldn't care less. But that did not mean I didn't want to do the same back to them. Like, I was so angry as well from everything that was going on.
I imagine.
I was just there, like, I felt untouchable. I felt like no one could hurt me. No one could touch me because I didn't care, you know? And to win that World Championships under those circumstances was like one of the most emotional times of my life. And even then, Dominic, like, no one had ever won the Worlds before. I was still the only person to win a Worlds, and and this Worlds was 10 years later. Wow. So I'd won it twice. and no one else had won it before me, and I'd managed to do it again with all that going on. Sometimes I just think, how did you do that? That's absolutely ridiculous. But it just shows you, doesn't it? Like, we are incredible. Like, when our backs are against the wall, if you choose to fight, we can do some amazing things, you know. And if you choose to bury your head in the sand, you're not going to learn anything from that. You've always got to choose to fight.
And that really shows me, or tells me, hearing that, the power of the mind, how, you know, physically we're capable of such a lot, but that you cannot undervalue mentally what actually you can push yourself through. And I feel like, again, listening to you say that, there's nothing in sport that seems to be more dangerous than an athlete, a team, or whatever that's fighting hard with nothing to lose. Because, like you said, you just didn't care. You didn't care if you were going to get hit or where or whatever. I was going to hit that person back twice as hard, and I was just going to go for it. Like you said, if I lost, then life, whatever was happening, was far more important. Retrospectively, looking back, would you consider that to be your greatest achievement in the sport? Because of everything around it.
I felt at the time that I'd just done my job.
Right.
And I'd gone, right, I'm going Olympics, let's go home and be at home and be the daughter that they need me to be. But I suppose, if you look at it, it probably was. I would imagine, it probably was, wasn't it? You know, to go through what I was going through, to manage, you know, two kind of teams, home team and Taekwondo team, and to get everyone to buy into what you're trying to do. I'm really proud of that, you know, and the power of kind of teamwork, people wanting to work for you because they believe in you, and they believe that you're a good person and want to work with you and all that. And to actually win was amazing. So I would, let's say that.
And then I guess the time period between winning that World Championships and the experience, going towards London 2012, that time period, I imagine as well, was just as difficult.
Yeah, I mean, probably more so, really.
Yeah.
So, after the Worlds, I only got another, I think, 2-3 months with my dad till he lost his battle with cancer, which obviously was devastating. But my mum had cancer and was still trying to fight. So it's a surreal thing, you know, to go through, really. It's absolutely crazy. And I know I'm probably not the only one to have gone through what I went through. And 3 months after that, I lost my mum as well. So it's mad. So January, everything was perfect. October, I'd won a World Championships and lost both parents. Wow. Like, it felt like someone just flicked a switch and that's it. It's happened. Crazy how it happened. And then obviously after that, it's like, right, I'm still going to go to the Olympics with all this grief, with all this, I don't even know how to explain it. I think it's the most horrible situation you could ever be in. Yeah. But I think the Olympics kept me going because there's not a chance I was ever going to not try and be there. I had to be there. I had to try. I mean, what's the point in sitting at home crying? Because, you know, grief lasts a lifetime. And I've got all the time after the Olympics to grieve, I suppose, and to be a bit of a mess. And I think when something like that happens, you do go into it's a roller coaster, but there's a lot of shock in there, and you don't know how to react. So I suppose whilst you're trying to come to terms with what's happened, it gave me that time, I suppose, to try and qualify to get to London. And I spoke about it a lot with my psych. I spoke about it all the time, and it was, I suppose, more upsetting for her than it was for me, because I don't think I'd processed it. I don't think I'd accepted it yet. And I was all right with that, because I thought, listen, if I'm not crying in the ball, let's just get to the Olympics, and after I'll probably be a mess. And that was the case.
Right. it was delayed until after what I imagine must have been quite a contrasting feeling at 2012 for you, having, like you said, you know, your parents saying that they'd like to be there with you for that Olympic Games, for them to not be there, but then also I guess you were carrying them with you in that Games, and it's a surreal feeling of with it being a home Games. And what was your emotion around that time?
Oh, it was hard. It was hard. I'd also ruptured my ACL, my anterior cruciate ligament, in January 2012. Just so you think it can't get any worse, Dominic. You know, when I do my talk to everyone, I always feel sorry for them because they're probably thinking, oh, that poor girl. But I'm fine, you know, I'm good. Going through that injury, I've had an ACL surgery before, and it's one of the hardest things I've ever gone through mentally. Yeah. But then to be going through what I'd already gone through, trying to get to the Olympic, losing my parents, and then that, I'd done all right so far. I was kind of plodding on, but that knee injury, that did nearly break me, I'll be honest. That was like,
the straw
I can't do this.
On the back of the camel.
Yeah, and it was like, come on, like, universe, please, there's no need for that, you know, help me out a little bit, you know. And I think getting to the Olympics with all that was a massive, massive achievement, huge, and I'm very, very proud of myself for getting there. But I didn't know at the time I wanted to win. I wanted to get the happy ending that everyone else wanted me to have. But it was, in a way, as soon as I stepped onto the mat, I knew that it wasn't going to happen. I just wasn't Sarah. I wasn't the same person physically or mentally I was in that World Championships the year before. With the injury, obviously, with itself, it's 6 months after an ACL is crazy to even have made it. Then obviously all the mental, the stress, the grief, physically and mentally that I'd had in my body as well. It was just too much, absolutely too much. But, you know, I had an amazing family. My family was there. I'm so happy that they all came to support me. And we made it, we got there. And no, you don't always get the happy ending you deserve, but I'm proud that I even give it a go, you know. I'm very proud of that.
Absolutely. And gave, like you said, the fact that you got there after the injury alongside everything from the year before that is an achievement in itself. And then was it the year after then you decided to retire? Was that a culmination of everything and injury?
I mean, that would have been my last Olympics anyway. Yeah. I think if I'd had a bit more of a happier journey to that Olympics, I was thinking, should I go to the World Championships and retire after that? Or, you know, but if I'd have got a gold at the Olympics, I probably would have gone, oh no, you know what, I've done everything, let's leave it there. Yeah. I was ready anyway, but I in my head and to my team, I retired the next day. I'd done, like absolutely done. I couldn't do any more. But officially it was probably around like 10 months, a year later, officially. But like I was kind of done, you know, and I was happy because retirement's hard. But retirement's easier when you're the one that gets to choose when you stop as well. Yeah. I think it does make it a little bit easier.
Definitely. And since then, like you said, you do a lot of talks around your story and mental well-being and resilience. And I guess part of that's passing that along to the next generation of athletes as well, you know, setting up an academy to educate and train young athletes across not just Taekwondo, but a broad range of sports. How important is that to you?
Yeah, I mean, I did that, set that up really in amongst all the other drama, because we didn't have anything in place at the time. And even that was so good for me. You know, I remember having to go to a weekend camp that I'd set up for the young people in my sport. I think it was it either in between my mum dying and having a funeral, I had to go and do that and be Sarah Stevenson Inspires and trying to inspire all these young people. And I wanted to not do it, but I'm so glad I did it I did go. It was hard, but those kids kind of helped me. They made me smile. They gave me a good distraction. And it's nice to see now that some of those kids that I helped back then, are still, at the top level of Taekwondo. We've just got our first ever double male world champion. So Bradley Sinden, he's just won the Worlds last year for the second time. And he came to my camps. I'm not saying I did that, I didn't do that. But obviously, he had a club and he's been in the academy and everything. But just to know that, I was there on the journey with them, and hopefully inspired them in some way to carry on with Taekwondo,
So your appreciation of the sport, how much has it changed since Sydney 2000 to where it is today, I guess in a GB context?
Wow. Well, if you imagine Sydney, we had 2 staff, 2 athletes, as I would imagine in the last, how many did we have in the last Olympics? We can't always have a lot because we only have a certain amount of weight groups. We don't have many weight groups. 4 males, 4 females is the max you can take. And if you do that, then that's ridiculous. Not many countries do that. I think at the last Olympics, we had 3 girls, 2 boys, so 5 athletes, and probably triple the amount of staff versus athletes. A full-time centre in Manchester, world-class gym, Olympic champions, multiple world champions after me. And it's nice to see. And it's, I think if you can be a retired athlete and be proud of the next generation coming through, and that helps you, I think, to move on as well. And yeah, it's incredible to see how amazing they're doing now, and to know that you had a helping hand at the start of all that is nice as well.
I can imagine. Just a final question before I ask you for a piece of advice. How do you think your career, and particularly those extremely difficult 2 years, I know it's obviously longer than that, but within the context of your career, those 2 years have shaped you to where you are now, and how that has affected you being a parent, and also kind of your motivations of what you're doing now?
Well, there's a lot of positives and negatives because, losing the 2 people that can only give you unconditional love is horrific. And time, again, like I said, is a healer. Time does give you chance to heal. And grief can take over your life if you let it. And I think it did take over my life for a very long time. But there does have to come a point where you have to stop. You don't have to stop loving them, missing them, smiling, talking about them. But at some point, like in my experience, there has to come a point where you have to live again. And everyone's different. But I've got a great husband who was like, Sarah, this needs to stop. I had the kids. I feel like I was just a different person. And I think what you go through, grief does change you. But you've got to be able to be all right with that and to live your life. And I got a bit of a slap of perspective from him, and I kind of just stopped wallowing in it really and started to live a bit better. And it does take time, but I'll never be the same person I was. None of us are we, from 10 years ago? But that amount of trauma does affect you massively, some ways negatively, some ways positively. And I think the positives are that perspective. So as a parent or as a family, we really appreciate like what we've got. I appreciate the little things. I appreciate the walk in the park that I had yesterday, and the kids, smiling, and was sitting watching Avatar 2 together last night, and my son, shooting me with his arrows and stuff like that, and giving my family time and love, because I know that could be taken away in a split second. I think that's what I've learned the most.
I just want to say how appreciative I am, and for you to come on and to the podcast and talk about your career, but also, the tough and traumatic experiences that you've had. And I find it extremely refreshing and interesting about how you talk about grief and mental resilience. And I felt the same way when you were as part of the panel on the mental health awareness live that we did last month. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I know that people listening that maybe going through difficult times of their own will be able to take a lot from what you've been talking about here. So thank you very much for that. And
thanks.
I
hope so. And that's the reason why I'm so open. You've got to talk about it. It's good to talk, but if it helps one person, I'm happy. I love helping people. And I love sharing my story because I know there's other people out there that have gone through this that don't have a voice, so it's important to talk about grief and how it affects you. Absolutely.
And there's one piece of nugget of information and advice that is left. I mean, you've offered so much of it, but it's a piece of advice, and it can be about anything at all that you would like to leave for a guest coming onto the podcast in the near future.
Right, you know what? Because I know the piece of advice that was left for me was lovely and amazing, but I'm going to go back to my proper Yorkshire roots, right? I'm going to keep it really simple. And I think I said this before, but it is what my coach taught me when I was moaning and complaining about stupid things. And you know what? It's just sometimes you've just got to shut up and get on with it. And that is my piece of advice, Dominic. I know that's proper, like blunt to the point, but you know what? We have to, don't we? Like stop moaning and get on with it.
I really look forward to passing that along and giving some context around it as well. Sarah, thank you.
Yeah, give some context. Don't just say it as it is. But, I used to write that on the wall, when I was, sorry I'm going on, but when I was training for the World Championships with all that everything going on. And I thought I wrote it on a whiteboard, shut up and get on with it. Because that reminded me that there's someone out there going through so much more than you. What are you going to complain about? You are training for a World Championship. Just shut up and do your training and get there and smash it. And that's that resilience sometimes that we need, isn't it? Let's not fluff it up sometimes. Let's just get on with it. Anyway, so yeah, please give context to it.
No, but that is important because some people respond well to, they need an arm around them and some support. But actually for you, sometimes you just needed, I think you said earlier, a slap round the face to get ready for your next match and also just get on with it. So I think that is actually also a piece of advice and a message in itself. So I look forward to passing that along. Thank you, Sarah, so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Outside and Active podcast with our guest, Sarah Stevenson MBE. I hope you really enjoyed, and if you did and you think you know someone who would enjoy it just as much as you, then please forward this podcast onto them. Let's grow this Outside and Active community. We'll be back next week with another episode, and until that time, I've been Dominic Brown. Enjoy the outdoors.